We are live.
चाय 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 गिरेगी बीच में तो
Friends, as we are approaching towards the end of lockdown free, we can feel the increased excitement of the blood flowing in our body. Few of us have already resumed, but from Monday, most of us would be there in our offices. So, among many new plans and ideas, there would also be some confusions as regards resumption of engineering services, which may bother us. And that's the reason we all are here. Recent incidents like that of Vishakhapatnam really frightens us and reminds us of our responsibility of checking everything thoroughly before we start again. So namaskar, hello and good evening to everyone. I extend you all a warm welcome to be here on part 2 of our panel discussion on guidelines for resumption. Many of you already witnessed the launch of this document on 30th April in the presence of almost 3,000 attendees and eminent panelists across various societies like ISHRE, IPA, IMA, GSES, and FSAI. I'm glad to share with you that these guidelines have been taken with a lot of warmth and have been accepted by all the industry members with great seriousness. These guidelines have proved to be very helpful for one and all while reopening the business and assets. We have got some ground report and valuable inputs from people who have actually used the guidelines during resumption of services, and based on their feedback, we have now revised the document and are ready with version 2 of the same. So after incorporating the latest inputs, this has now become more comprehensive in nature, covering even those aspects which somehow were missing in our version 1. So most of you must have already downloaded these version 2, and those of you who still have not got it, please download it from FSAI's website. And I request you, please share it with all the relevant people you know. It can really be of great use to them. So friends, to make this document more fruitful, we invited questions from all across the industry on the problems anticipated, as well as any pain areas for the restart of operations. So we have received a lot of questions, and today our esteemed panel would try to answer a few of those questions. We have a vivid panel on board and a very dynamic and charming moderator. They will try to bring down the experiences of last 2 weeks of resumption of engineering services, which also is the exact topic of today's discussion. I'm Ankur Gupta, currently a Vice Chairman of Events and Programs at Fire and Security Association of India. And I wish to convey my heartfelt thanks in advance to all the panelists who have taken some time out to enlighten all of us. So friends, let's start today's discussion by welcoming our bright panel. It is indeed an honor and privilege for me to introduce today's moderator. He is none other than Mr. Pankaj Dharkar. Most of us already know him, but for those who are not aware, let me tell you that he is an MEP and green building consultant, heading Pankaj Dharkar and Associates. And at present, he is handling 300 projects of all possible applications. Mr. Dharkar has always been a dynamic and has contributed tremendously towards achieving the goals and visions of various engineering societies at national and international level. He's got lots of professional credits and awards on his name. He is also the chairman of FSAI COVID-19 task force. So let us welcome him with an applause. Over to you, Mr. Dharkar.
Thank you, Ankur. Thank you for that introduction and setting the tone. Let me first thank all our partner associate societies, FSAI team, IMA team, ISHRE, IPA, GSES, and ASSOCHAM. And I welcome all of you this evening, wonderful evening, on our second webinar on this subject. We are indeed privileged today that we have two eminent personalities, rather towering personalities, who would be with us. One, Mr. Sanjay Pant, is already with us, and all of us knows him. I will come to him, come to his proper introduction at a suitable time. But of course, Niranjan Hiranandani ji is also going to join us in some time. So I think we are really blessed with something special today, and this evening is going to be superb with eminent panelists we have. Just to recap, the first case of coronavirus in India was reported on 30th January when a university student from Wuhan traveled back to the state of Kerala. On 30th April, the day we launched our first version, we had 33,050 cases, and today evening they were standing at 85,950. Probably they will cross 86,000 this evening. You will all recall that on 22nd March, we had a voluntary public curfew on behest of our Prime Minister. And immediately after that, on 24th March, a nationwide lockdown for 21 days, halting public transport, shutting down offices, factories, and shops was called up. 14th April, the Prime Minister extended lockdown till 3rd May, which was further extended to 17th May. Considerable relaxations were given in a couple of districts. And I was just told by my wife that the lockdown 4 is extended by 2 weeks. We are yet to get official news. Many of you would have seen the news. I have not seen that, but it is definitely going to 29th May in many major cities of the country. The COVID-19 pandemic is one of the most dangerous challenges world is facing. It is human crisis with several severe health and socio-economic consequences. What lessons we have learned from this crisis for prevention and control in future? UN Secretary General says that now is the time for unity to work together in solidarity to stop this virus and its shattering consequences. COVID-19 is presenting us with common enemy scenario in which society begins to forget their differences and come together to reset and regroup. All societies related to building engineering services, which have considerable influence on the sustainability and energy demand of building, as well as health and well-being of its occupant, have decided to come together with a common purpose. The biggest challenge business will have to face now will be restarting their operations after lockdown ends. Every possible step has to be taken to minimize the impact on people as well as buildings when they restart, since lockdown of premises have occurred in very sudden and unplanned manner. Many organizations and business houses are adopting a wait and see attitude. But friends, we cannot afford to only wait and see at this time. We need mobilization, integrated efforts, communication of accurate information, and discussion to overcome the issues related to resumption. For the first time in history, 6 societies, ASSOCHAM, GSES, ISHRE, IMA, IP, and FSAI have come together to publish guidelines for resumption of building services in commercial and industrial building post-COVID lockdown. The guidelines were launched on 30th April, and on 14th May, we have revised the version 2.0 and which was again released. In fact, this was sent to all earlier registered entries, and also various societies have sent to their respective members. If you haven't got, please download from your respective society websites. There are huge challenges for any premises to start refunctioning in terms of sanitation, electrical services, security systems, PHE systems, air conditioning and ventilation systems, fire protection system, which are addressed in these guidelines and shall be very useful for all establishments to resume their operations. I'm sure many of you who have been attending, they must have gone through guidelines. We did get very constructive comments, and that's why we came up with version 2. And there are many offices which have started in these 2 weeks. Of course, the major cities are still under lockdown, but cities like Bangalore or many other cities have already started functioning. So we are here to also understand their experiences. And this is a unique document. Maybe globally, this kind of event had never happened. And I'm really proud to announce is that nowhere in the world such consolidated document was done by any country. So I think we need that applause all of you who have also been associated with. We did get extraordinary comments on these guidelines: meaningful, impressed, unique, effective and efficient, visualize, helpful, best sessions, 23 varieties of inputs. So many input came. It was so heartening that hard work done by various team members of IMA, ISHRE, IPA, FSAI got such wonderful recognition, very unique by itself. So friends, without wasting further time, I would like to introduce my panelists today. First, let me introduce Mr. Vipul Ray. Mr. Ray is a Senior Vice President at IMA, which is an apex body of Indian electrical and electronics manufacturers in India. A mechanical engineer by qualification, Mr. Ray is successfully running his family business Almex, which is market leader in wire termination technology in India. Welcome, Mr. Vipul Ray. Next, let us welcome Mr. Rohit Pathak, Vice President of IMA. He is working as President and CEO of Aditya Birla Insulators and has been a principal EA to Aditya Birla Group Chairman Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla. He has a great understanding of international business and strategic planning. We are glad to have him this discussion today. Welcome, Mr. Rohit. And who doesn't know Vishal Kapoor? His most dynamic personality, having reached 24 years of experience with HVAC and our industry. He is the Managing Director of Mayo HCP Air Conditioning Private Limited. He has served ISHRE in the capacity of National President 2017-18, National Treasurer 15-16, and is currently the Chairman of ISHRE COVID Task Force and also chairing the Technical Committee of ISHRE. Welcome, Vishal. Friends, let us welcome Mr. Samir Saxena ji, President of GSES, who is an experienced corporate real estate professional based in National Capital Region of Delhi. Samir currently is a regional head for HSE, travel and real estate functions for one of the Fortune 200 organizations based in NCR. Handling a large portfolio of FM services, procurement, travel and hospitality, and health and safety, his experience is absolutely rich. Welcome, Saxena sir. Gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Devendra Gill, Chapter President of FSAI from Delhi. He is working with Delhi Metro Rail Corporation since 2007 and is presently General Manager looking after safety in constructions at Delhi and Mumbai. He has also served DRDO for 17 years. He has personally contributed in drafting Part C of these guidelines, which talks about under construction sites. And friends, today in this panel, he brings with him rich experiences because the DMRC has started working in Delhi and Mumbai, both the sites. So his inputs are going to be very, very interesting and valuable to all of you. Next, Pradeep Seth, my dear friend from city of Ahmedabad, having done his Bachelor Engineering in 1971, is an eminent and well-known MEP consultant of our country, a panelist with huge national and international experience. He is currently director with INI Design Studio, a leading architectural firm of country. Welcome, Pradeep Bhai. Mr. Neeraj Arora is a senior director and head of Ashocham GEM. He is an BE, certified energy manager and auditor. He has worked over 150 green building facilitation work with USGBC, GREHA, IGBC in varieties of projects in India, Jakarta, Dubai, Dhaka, Bangkok, and currently working as senior director of CGEM based out of Delhi. Welcome, Neeraj Bhai. Sudhir Mathur is my dear friend from Jaipur. He is graduate from NMNIT with over 30 years of experience, eminent MEP consultants of country, and a very strong pillar of IPA, ISHRE, FSAI, and many other engineering societies of Rajasthan. Welcome, Sudhir Bhai. Prashant Dabre is another eminent MEP consultant amongst us from Mumbai. He has, to his credit, more than 200 special projects for multinational banks, telecom industry, automobile industry. He has made substantial contribution to COVID guidelines and to FSI COVID Task Force. Welcome, Prashant ji. Rajnish Agarwal, a dynamic MEP consultant based out of Delhi, partner and director at PDA Consultant. He is currently engaged with design of large hotels, hospital, educational institutions. He is very active member of FSI COVID Task Force and currently is also National Event Chair for FSI. Welcome, Rajnish ji. And last panelist, I am very glad to introduce Abbasaheb Kale, an Executive Vice President of Marsh Risk Consulting Practice, Marsh India Insurance Brokers Private Limited. Abbasaheb is a very passionate property loss prevention, fire protection and disaster management professional with hands-on industry experience of 22 years. Here is he representing GACS, a Joint Secretary, Disaster Management. Welcome, Abbasaheb. In fact, it was he who ignited this COVID task force of FSI, and later on we took this task for coming out with the guidelines. So thank you, Abbasaheb, for your contribution. So let me now introduce our chief guest for the today. Mr. Sanjay Pant is our chief guest today and also well known to all of us. He has over 31 years of professional experience. He has written and presented several important papers in national and international journals and seminars. He was author of landmark revision of concrete code. We all connect him for his huge contribution towards completion of National Building Code 2005 and then making National Building Code 2016 as world's best code. He has been conferred with several awards during his career, which includes Lifetime Achievement Award from FSAI last year. He currently heads Civil Engineering Department at BIS. So welcome, Mr. Sanjay Pant, for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Darkar Saab. The chairman
Sanjay
of the
ji?
FSCI. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Pankaj Darkar ji, chairman of FSCI COVID-19 Task Force and moderator. I also see that the keynote speaker, Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, President SOCHM, is yet to join. He is also welcome to this session. The esteemed members of the panel, there are maybe a few hundreds, maybe will reach 1,000 plus members or delegates who would join. All are welcome to this important panel discussion. There will be a very senior BIS officials that would have also joined. So they are all welcome. First of all, I am grateful to SOCHM, to FSCI, to IPA, to IMA, all of them for having invited me to this important session. My congratulations to you for coming out with these guidelines for resumption of air conditioning and ventilation and fire life safety, ELV services, electrical and plumbing systems for commercial and industrial facilities post COVID-19 lockdown version 2. I think it is a very important addition to all of us who are looking forward to an engineering approach to doing things post this pandemic. The SOCHM, the technical partners, the knowledge partners, all involved in this endeavor, they all deserve my congratulations. Having been asked to say a few words, I would, in my own way, would like to submit to you whether it's guidelines of this sort, which I have gone through, or anything that we do in day-to-day life today. Everything is going to change. Whether it is the way we live in our home, the way we conduct, the way we meet with the people or members of the society, the way we operate in our offices or industry, everything is going to change. Now, but then for India particularly, I see that it is less of a burden compared to the Western world. In fact, the way the India has conducted itself for thousands of years, it is in a way was very conducive to all kind of situations. We have already faced various kinds of challenges, and the Indian way has helped. The way we do namaste rather than shaking hands, the way we greet other people, the way we provide space for first for elders to sit and then we take a back seat. So that sort of a situation for which we are already trained since our childhood would come very handy. Now so the essential aspects of use of face mask as covered in the guidelines, the protocols of sanitation, the social distancing, whether it is meetings through video conferencing or the way we must conduct in office or the canteens, where we must not create a situation where to facilitate the pandemic situation, the personal health and hygiene maintenance, and in case we find any kind of poor health, the medical advice that need to be sought, where we can go for self quarantine if it is needed, the coughing etiquette, the delivery of objects or goods to us in offices at residences, the way we receive the dog or dispatch the dog, the disinfection that may be required before we jump over any of such goods and services that we receive, the travel advisory that are to be complied with, the conditions of the residential zone, whether we are in a hotspot or otherwise. So all these will remain with us for some more time to come, and that remains for the engineering and industrial fraternity also. Now the approach towards the entire thing, I see what are the areas to be dealt with. See, the major areas we all have to deal with in future and that we are dealing are economy, education, energy, environment, finance, governance, health, housing, recreation, safety, in general safety or safety against disasters or personal safety, sewage and sanitation, solid waste management, telecommunication and innovation, transportation, and urban planning and water supply. These are broad 16 sectors. I would draw attention of all of you to the new Indian standards that we have brought out on indicators for sustainable development of habitats, IS 17,000, which enlist these 16 sectors and some of the core areas and supporting areas under each of these sectors that have to dealt with. So we can divide our entire efforts towards some of these sectors, but it will be very difficult to talk of each of these sectors and under a discussion of this nature. But I will draw your attention to the Indian standard IS 17,000. That's why we kept a number which is very familiar to understand and know to reach to this kind of publications. All Indian standards, indigenous standards, they have been made free for download from BIS websites. So please download the Indian standards and make use of them, including IS 17,000. That's my first submission. The second submission to all of you to trigger the today's discussion is self-reliance. Now, the self-reliance, which was highlighted by Honorable Prime Minister of India, can be done in two ways in our understanding from the engineering parlance. One is sustainability, second is professional competence. So we can divide our entire discussion from the two point of view. Sustainability includes sustainability in the event of pandemic, and self-reliance by creating professional competent people who should be able to deal with each of these areas. Now when we talk about sustainability, the areas are all encompassing. For example, it starts with external development. When we do any kind of development henceforth, it must be in a sustainable manner, because you have seen the way when we disrupt the natural phenomena that has been working for lakhs of years in the world. See, there is going to be a reflection or reaction to that by the nature itself. That's what has happened in this pandemic. That happens when there is a landslide. The way we build our roads or habitat our hill areas trigger landslides, and therefore we have to take care of those aspects. So when we do all kind of external development, we have to ensure, which applies to this pandemic also, the areas and cities have to be walkable, accessible, cyclable, and easily reachable on foot, so that or even by wheelchair movement, so that it is very conducive for any kind of event. Today, even movement has become very difficult when we had to move there. So the cities have to become very conducive from point of view external development. We should have mass rapid transit system. We have to reduce the load on our roads, so that we are able to travel conveniently in a safe manner without overcrowding. So that is one way of external development that we have to ensure. The second thing is, when we come from external development, the type of I talked about walkability or cyclability, or the kind of vegetation, the trees that must be grown, the kind of, and therefore when we come to the buildings have another kind of area. When we do the plan or design or execute the building, we must be able to use local kind of materials. Now you have seen so many workers have reached all parts of the country. Now everywhere the construction has to be done by the people. You have to use local material, local skill, and ensure that the construction is done with the least amount of disruption, and use of local technologies, and how this can be promoted along with the modern system that we have developed all these years. So therefore and then here comes better performance and better kind of technology, how this can be ingrained with the local available technology and talent which is available in the country. And then finally, when the built environment is available, can we track the performance of such built environment in terms of whether it will perform in the event of a pandemic, in the event of a disaster, in the event of any kind of man-made disasters, in kind of fire, or another kind of situation we can enter is reduced supply or availability of water. So we have to be prepared, whether it's a building or a asset is on fire, whether we have scarcity of water, whether we have a pandemic coming onto us as onslaught to all of us. So we have to be geared with this. The sustainable approach in all facets of life has to be supported by what is called professional competence. So the second objective that we have to meet is of improving the professional competence of people, whether it is a town planner or an architect or a civil engineer or a structural engineer or landscape architect or building services engineer, including plumbing engineer, firefighting specialist, or electrical engineer, IT specialists, or you have the accessibility specialist, sustainability or green building specialist, you have constructor or contractors or supervisors of the building, urban designers. So the second approach is, how can we build their competence to deal with all kind of possible situation. Do they have adequate amount of knowledge to plan a building or a city in a manner that it will behave differently or with better resilience? That is our objective. Now the resilience part is has to be fully ingrained in all kinds of planning, be at township level or building level, and then every professional has to be competent to deal with all kinds of situations. So therefore we have to improve the professional competence. Again, for improving the professional competence of the architects or engineers or town planners or contractors, we have to ensure that the education system must improve to deal with this. Suddenly we will not be able to bring out so many professionals. Today's dearth of professionals of competent level, therefore it will not be possible. So the other kind of job that we must ensure that we are able to deal with this kind of situation, not only now, in future also, to create a stock of professionals who are qualified and competent, who are aware of the standards, the building code, and who are able to support us in each of these guidelines that we bring out in future. So that's my submission to all of you, that today, not only today's debate on the kind of the situation in the industry to restart this industrial activity or construction activity, we must learn from the situation that we have entered into by creating a pool of competent people, improve the professional competency at all levels, at the level of architects, town planners, the building civil engineers, the structural engineers, the building services engineers, the skilled level workers or semi-skilled workers. So without which India cannot, it is said that in 4 times the India which we have already built is yet to be built. We will not be able to build that kind of India which we envisage, which is sustainable, which is orderly, which is accessible, which is resilient, unless we have the pool of such competent people. We should have a robust guidelines the way you have made. There are other building code and other guidelines are also available. First of all, we should have robust guidelines. Then we have people who are competent to implement those guidelines. With that submission, I once again thank all of you and wish all the deliberations of today's panel discussion all the success. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. I think on behalf of ASSOCHAM, FSCI, EMA, GSES, IPA, and ISHRE, I thank you very much. I think you said it that the life is going to change. Every one of us is going to work in a different way post this pandemic. And of course, you also gave us a good insight on IS 17000. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let me take pleasure of introducing you our today's keynote speaker, Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani ji. He's the president of Apex Industry Body of India, ASSOCHAM, and a co-founder and managing director for Hiranandani Group of Companies. Dr. Hiranandani is widely known as builder extraordinary and as the man responsible for changing the skyline of Mumbai with the delivery of landmark project Hiranandani Gardens at Powai. Under his remarkable leadership, the Hiranandani Group diversified into education, healthcare, hospitality, infrastructure, entertainment, and organized retail, which has set the benchmark in terms of quality construction, precision engineering, technology and innovation, timely delivery, and holistic development. He is also a member of RERA Consolidation Cell formed by Maharashtra Real Estate Regulatory Authority, MAHA, RERA, what we call them. Member of Central Governing Council of Export Promotion Council for EOUs and SEZs under Ministry of Commerce and Government of India. Apart from being a Forbes top listed Indian real estate developer, Mr. Hiranandani is also a renowned philanthropic, trustee of 17 colleges, 8 schools, 2 hospitals, and 3 temples. We are all delighted, sir, and we are looking forward for your good words for this evening. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. It's so happy to be over here to talk to all of you. I must congratulate Mr. Darkar for having organized this seminar, Mr. Sanjay Raut for his erudite pointing out so many things which I think were very important for all of us to hear. I only heard the last 5-7 minutes, but I could see that the kind of understanding that you have in the subjects of today is something that I wish I could hear all, and I hope we have recorded it, so I will also take the benefit of it at the later time. There are several things that India is looking at, and if tomorrow the Prime Minister has said that in spite of everything that has happened, we want the economy to come back to stream as early as possible, the kind of strong steps that he has taken in terms of the lockdown has created untold problems in terms of the industrial space. It has created untold problems in terms of the migratory labor. It has created a lot of untold problems and a lot of fear in the minds of people. But it has saved lives. Lives of the people have been saved. And it is only a strong Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, who could have taken this kind of hard, strong, necessary decision in order to put lives out of danger. This is the first and most important thing, which it means actually there has been a shutdown of many of our units, both in terms of construction, in terms of engineering, and except for a few of the industrial occupation, which is relating to pharmaceutical and other continuous process industries, which could not be shut down really, most of the companies have closed down completely. They have also lost a lot of technical workforce. And this is a second major problem that we have flagged off, that a lot of people out of fear have run back to their villages, and a lot of persons who have been skilled, trained, and running this engineering products are gone back to the villages. That's a real severe concern that we all have in order to see on the resumption of the whole thing. Let me give you an example of the type of problem that we have on the workforce that today. Just take my own company's work site. We had 4,500 workmen on transitory labor, migratory labor who were residing on my work site. Almost 2,000 of them have now left as on the type of opening out of the economy. And they have not only not traveled by train or by bus, but they have actually walked long distances simply out of the fear that is there in the mind. And the danger is how fast and quickly are we going to get back these people of migrant labors back into the economy, and how are we going to substitute temporarily the skill sets that we need, which Mr. Sanjay Raut said, the efficiency with which we will have to actually monitor a lot of this activity and take care to see that the industrial work get back into it with the same efficiency, and if not improved efficiency in future. So I think that's a major concern that we will have to flag off and see how are we going to be able to address these issues. We have 5 major organizations which participate in it. The Indian Society of Heating Refrigeration, ISHRE, the Fire and Safety Association, Plumbing, Electrical and IMA, and of course, the Global Association of Corporate Services. These specifications in terms of each of these activities requires to be re-looked at very, very carefully, because we have had one industrial accident, which has the gas leak which took place. And I think this is a flag off to a lot of people as to how are we going to really put back these industrial operations back into action, because a multiplicity of such accidents could be a severe danger to the lives and safety of people who are working in these industrial occupations. So I think what we do need is each of the engineering groups may, at a macro level, flag off certain aspects of it during this conference and subsequently as to what are the dangerous items which people have experienced in the past. So people of your qualifications also have a lot of experience of accidental things that could happen and will happen when you try to restore such operations in terms of the industry, across the industry. So I think what would be important is, just like in the case of COVID, we have made handbooks to say how do we actually handle these situations. A similar type of handbook could be made by each of these associations, and if you like, and you can give it to us in ASSOCHAM, we will compile these things once the data is available from you, in order to compile it and then spread it both in soft copy, because hard copies are not going to be disseminatable in this COVID period. The third thing that we really need to flag off is the kind of skill sets that industry needs. The Prime Minister has, in interaction with ASSOCHAM, been highlighting the fact of the skill sets that we need to do, and the skill training National Skill Development Council, of which now I have been nominated as a director, have taken up a lot of these issues. What do we have? On one side, we have unemployed, unskilled people, and on the other side, we have a detriment of number of skilled people that we need in terms of industry and occupation. Let me tell you that earlier when I needed for my construction activity 500 skilled workmen, I would get 2,500 of them. Today, when I need 500 skilled people, I do not get more than 100 to 150, and the contractors and other people have to actually search diligently and really exert themselves to get this all. So what does it mean? It means that all our associations and ASSOCHAM put together needs to start working very strongly on the skill sets that industry needs to do, old and new. And this is going to be a very important factor in the days to come, especially in view of the return of labor to coming back over there. Surprisingly, I can share with you a story of what has happened in the case of the Middle East, Dubai, where the working people have who are having very good skill sets and are paid very handsome salaries over there, have opted to return to India rather than stay in the Middle East, where here in India, they would not only not get the jobs, but I mean, they would not get the salaries that would be available in the Middle East and Dubai, but they would get probably no jobs in India of a similar kind which they are enjoying in the Middle East. But the fear of the COVID in terms of the Middle East has brought this labor to come back, and this has principally happened in the case of Kerala and in the case of UP. So these are the two centers where people have come back. Maybe we could identify some of these skill set people who have migrated back from the Middle East, who are highly skilled in terms of this, to either take up these jobs or to actually act as teacher training in terms of the people who have come back and use this opportunity to use their skill sets in order to make the difference. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that there is a duty which the Prime Minister has cast on us as institutions that we have to fill up the gaps which are coming up while we bring back restoration of what the Prime Minister wants to be, is to make a change in the entire economy. Those who are been reading the news in the recent times must have seen the kind of paradigm that the Prime Minister is wanting to set in terms of industry. Even today, the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, spoke about very, very strongly about various aspects of industrial change that is going to take place, right from the regions which we are talking about, from atomic energy, from defense production, to every other aspects of industrial change that is really taking place. Now, all this means that there is an opportunity of Make in India, which is to be the new paradigm. Something like the paradigm which took place in 1991, wherein the entire operations changed from a licensed industrial operation to an open operation. This will improve, this will open up a huge amount of opportunity to engineering field of activity, and a huge responsibility will be there on our shoulders in order to see that the operations on the engineering side are carried out as very properly put by Mr. Sanjay Raut, is done with an efficiency in order to see that all aspects of this are covered very, very carefully. I'm really delighted that you have organized this particular seminar and a webinar. I think this is going to be the new normal, as people call it, wherein we will be able to sit in the comforts of our own houses. I'm sure all your houses are comfortable enough for you because you are with your families. But having said that, I think this idea of dissemination of knowledge and information to one and all, spread all over the country, is going to be digitally now spread about, where you can have, the other day I was talking and giving a lecture, and I was shocked to know that I had 8,500 listeners at one point of time. Now, this would have been normally impossible to even think of in the times when we were in normal circumstances. So in reality, Let us use this COVID times and difficult times to create not a new norm, but to create a new super space. And let the engineering fraternity be the backbone and the cornerstone of creating a new economy and a new space that will make a lot of difference. I think Prime Minister is very clear. Technology is going to be the footprint and a new anchor, and he believes that the digital economy is going to make a world of a difference. It is our responsibility, my friends, to see that we take these new challenges, make the most of it in this period of time that we are having, and take the new onus to see that the paradigm which will take place of the new India will be such that the post-COVID will be seen, the COVID period and the post-COVID period will be seen as something which is a paradigm which is bringing about a new India. Prime Minister has taken up the challenge. The last 3-4 days of the statements of Nirmala Sitharaman, our finance minister, is indicated to me that they are not letting any opportunity left except for the migrant labor returning on walking, for which I am very empathetic and I feel very sad. All the rest of the steps taken by the government of India, the state governments, are to be lauded and complimented. And I really salute them. And I also hope and pray that we will also be able to take some of this responsibility on the engineering side, and ASSOCHAM will definitely partner with you in whatever way that you may suggest in order to see that this information is disseminated. We have almost 4.5 lakh SMEs as our members. Many of them are in small engineering companies. I think today with the digital systems which are there, we will be able to communicate all these things to them very efficiently, properly, quickly. And most of them are available in their homes as we are sitting here today. And we will be able to use this time lucratively. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. Congratulations. Thank you very much. I'm extremely proud of all of you. I really salute each one of you for taking up this very important issue. Remember, we have to forget the chalta hai attitude which we had in the past. Today, we are talking about going to the space. We are talking about technology change. We are talking about the new ideas of a new India. Let the engineers be the backbone of this new India. And I'm sure that the India that we will now create, the engineers will be the backbone of this. The engineers, doctors, and all these other professionals that we have, we will be a proud people of this country. Engineers which go to America, engineers which go to the Middle East, are looked upon as people of genius, people who are clever, people who are intelligent. So when an engineer goes to America and he says, I am from India, they think they have got a brainy guy who has come over there. In India, we do not communicate the same thoughts. A bad road, a bad product brings us down unnecessarily. Let us make this paradigm in the engineering community too. I think we should be proud that we will be able to say, I am an engineer. I am India. I am going to make the future of India. I will make the infrastructure second to none. This is something which I will look forward to from each and every one of you, and we will not let our country down. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My prayers to look after your good health, take care of all the elders in your families, look after the children, and let us look forward to a great day when we will talk again and communicate the best and good wishes to a bright new India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Niranjanji. I think it was wonderful, wonderful message to all of us. And in fact, it was so inspiring that I can tell you that we all were indeed absolutely stunned. You know, it was marvelous, sir. And it was at very short notice to you, and still you could make it. That only shows your dedication, your passion. I can assure you on behalf of all these societies that we are going to bother you, sir, because we were very pleased to know that you are on board of NSD. And this is something where building engineering industry has not really come to skill development line, which needs a lot of work which needs to be done by all our societies. We never got our hearing properly. You will be wondering that even our Fire and Security Association or ISHRE as a program or as a fraternity is not recognizing skill development. So in the building engineering segment, a lot needs to be done, sir. And we will all come back to you. And I'm sure Ashocham will show us the way. And this can be a great help in building the nation, as you rightly said, sir. So thank you once again, sir, for your passionate address. It was wonderful, wonderful evening for us. Thank you very much. And now I will move to our eminent panelists, and let me start with my first question to my dear friend Devendra. Starting with construction and labor intensive industries, will it be easy to get back the migrant labor who have returned home, as future scenario for COVID is not certain? Can you share your views and suggestions? Hiranandani ji, I just wanted to take this question first because you touched this subject, and Mr. Devendra is completely involved with DMRC in a big way, and he is a person who has this first-hand experience of last 2 weeks. So Devendra, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. First of all, very good evening to everyone. Well, as regard the question is concerned, my answer would be both yes as well as no. Yes, but the reason for why I say yes, I know that it will be a big, huge, challenging task to bring the workers back. We know that many of these workers have already left. Quite a large number of them have left. Good number of them have reached their destination. There are many who have left. Yeah, very painfully we have been watching the news about the miseries these people are facing when they are walking on foot to their villages. And then there is another category who are still stuck up in the places where the projects are on. And if you talk to them, every one of them is looking for an opportunity to go back to their villages. The very first opportunity they will get, they will go back. And in such people, there is a lot of factor of peer influence. We had cases where we have been able to motivate our workers to stay back, and then one fine day the nearest labor camp workers have shifted, they have gone, and next day these people have also changed their mind. So there is a huge issue when these people will be ready to come back, especially those who have left or those who have not been able to leave after the lockdown. So yes, the my response would be yes, it will be a huge task. But why I say no? Because we all know those who are into this particular sector, we know that construction workers are actually migratory workers. They are not permanent construction workers. They come and work at construction site when there is no much of the agriculture or harvesting requirements at their own villages. Barring few trades which are semi-skilled or skilled trades like operators, electrician, welders, plant operator, etc., which are around 20 to 25% of the total population, a good number, around 80-75% of the populace is purely unskilled worker. So they come and work in various towns whenever there is no agriculture work in their villages. So on an average, if on a construction project, the daily reporting is 1000 workers, and if you actually see the records from start to finish, the contracting agency have already enrolled and inducted more than 12 to 14,000 workers for that period of 18 to 20 months. So these people come, go, that is quite uh, acceptable in this particular business. The other ray of hope for me is a large number of workers who have gone during the Holi function. Just before the lockdown happened, in the first week of March, we had the festival of Holi. So large number of workers had visited, have left the site, and they are waiting for returning back. The only thing which is important is we have to create that conducive environment for them to come back, have that confidence. The tone set by the chief guest and the keynote speaker have very clearly indicated the need for strengthening our local competence also, because we know, like, people are leaving Middle East and coming to India because they feel more secure here. If we want to bring back the workforce in cities like Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Delhi, where we don't create that environment of security and safety for them, a safe environment from COVID, actually we will have a very, very difficult time, because they have no particular choice or any liking for a city. They move en masse and they go wherever they find a job opportunity. So today he is working with you in Delhi, and 6 months from now he will probably in Kolkata or Kochi. So that is what is also, if we want to bring them back, we have to create that environment where it is much safe. The other thing which also is very important, that the factor of local. Now we know that in every city there are a lot of local construction workers. We'll have to actually now start looking for building the competence of these local people for various construction trades. I know construction giants, I know construction agencies who used to have their own CSTIs, Construction Skill Training Institute. I know one which was operating in Pilakua at UP. But slowly all these initiatives by the construction agencies have also not been sustaining. So it's very important that we should also invest into making sure that we have the local workforce which can also take up. We can do the resource mapping. We can find out how many people are available: electrician, welders, masonry team, our scaffold team. So we'll have to look for how we can develop that competence. It has been very rightly pointed out about the skill development. You see, we have got a very innovative and very good scheme of Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, PMKY, KVY. Now, majority of the skill sectors have performed very well, whether it was retail, banking, hospitality, healthcare. But when it comes to construction sector, there is lot of work which is required to be done. It is huge opportunity for us now to actually concentrate on this. So again, reiterating that yes, it is a problem, but I also feel that if we actually try to attend to it in a proper manner, we will be able to get back these workers. The other thing also is, I feel that those who wish to go now, those who are stuck up in the cities of the project, they should be allowed to live in small groups safely, rather than providing them the resistance or not supporting them and making them go on foot and then meeting with miseries and accident, which actually may be very, very detrimental to their confidence of returning back, is also a very important key for us to make sure that they return back when the situation becomes normal.
Thank you, Devendra ji. I think you said it: conducive environment and local skill development and opportunities would change the scenario, and I agree with you in completely. My next question goes to Vipul ji. You represent the biggest electrical association, and your industry worried about likely skilled labor shortage once things open up, and how electrical industry is gearing up for the shortage of skilled manpower. So quickly, 2 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dargarji. First of all, congratulations and thank you for this second version of the guidelines. I think it is really making a big impact. I think that's the first step. I will answer your question looking at the complete value chain in terms of the Indian electrical industry. At the consumer or the end is the engineering, procurement and construction, which is the EPC. Fortunately, our members have given us feedback that the EPC construction sites have been ongoing. So the transmission, etc., has not stopped even during COVID, and they have been able to retain their workforce. So I think that's a very positive, and I wanted to start with that. The second value chain is the equipment manufacturers, and I think here is where the trouble will be, because the equipment manufacturers are typically MSMEs and also need a skilled workforce. The challenge is not only migration and even the rural. So there is also a state to state migration and an urban to rural migration. So one fact we will have to accept is that we'll have to work with a reduced manpower or reduced workforce. The idea of mitigating, and I think Indian electrical industry is quite matured, and what we have done in the past, the SOPs, the systems, the processes and the skilling, I think these are the 3 or 4 core things that the HR guys of every industry will have to take up. And now each supervisor and engineer will have to focus on how do I get this person who is now available to me, how do I make him multi-skilled, how do I strengthen my processes and systems so that someone who comes up is immediately ready to deliver. So what you say, the learning curve is shortened. I think those are the things that will be able to help us to mitigate. And from our industry point of view, I would say that we are quite matured. Our systems and processes are quite established, but there's definitely room for improvement. So that is how one way that we will mitigate this. The third part of the value chain is the, we are a capital goods equipment. So we depend a lot on our vendor base and transport and small, really tiny, a bolt manufacturer to a transformer manufacturer. And we see more challenge on that side. So unless the entire value chain starts to come up, apart from the manpower issues or the migrant issues, we see that the supply chain constraints may actually be more difficult to deal with. But going forward, I think we move ahead with courage and care. I think that is the motto that we have taken. We move cautiously, we retrain our people, and like Mr. Hiranandani was saying, take the engineering challenge head on. I think that's what we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Vipul bhai. You said courage and care, work with reduced manpower and skilling. I think that's takeaway from what you said. Thank you so much, Vipul bhai, for condensing that so sweetly. Rohit bhai, starting manufacturing activity along with maintaining of social distancing, which might have been very challenging with the workers, isn't it? And how can electrical industry overcome these challenges?
So, I think this is a good sequel to the previous question where Vipul mentioned that, in our industry, fortunately, a lot of SOPs and multi-skilling has already been done. Having said that, in equipment manufacturing, a lot of the work is assembly in nature, and that requires people working in crews, where 4 or 5 people are doing something together, and hence the first step many of us are taking is how do we redesign our SOPs where from a health and hygiene angle, we are able to manage social distancing at the workplace. So I think a lot of SOPs are being reworked, redone in a manner where we can work safely without exposing our workers to a potential COVID spread. Second is actually introducing new PPEs. So many, for example, have moved to not just gloves and face masks, but also face shields, which provide better cover, much better, sort of sprays and sanitization practices at the workflow. And I think the third one is around re-looking at some of our shift planning. So many plants which used to work only one shift are now working 2 shifts or 3 shifts to be able to do things in a sequence versus trying to do everything together, so that the differences and distances can be managed. So I think in some of the larger equipment manufacturers, this is being done, and already people have put this in place. However, like people said, I think the challenge is going to be in the smaller factories and suppliers that we have, like forging, which are very manual in nature and may not be very advanced. And I think that is where we need to ensure and take down practices to them, where they can improve their, the social distancing being managed in their shop floors. And I think this is the responsibility of some of the larger players in the industry to work with their suppliers, especially the SMEs and the micro SMEs, to help them develop these practices, which will ensure that they are able to operate also non-stop. Because if one of them stops, even if a bolt manufacturer stops, the whole supply chain falls for us, right? So we have to ensure and work with them and handhold them to go up the learning curve faster in these trying times.
Thank you, Rohit. I think takeaway is redesign of SOPs for health and hygiene and working in shift. Maybe many offices will have to go back for this concept. I think it was pleasure to know that. And of course, I heard PPEs use, of course, will come up in factories. And just to update you, Fire and Security Association of India is also helping firefighters of the country by giving PPEs. And this is what is one good work which is being done by COVID task force of FSSAI, because we want to protect them. They were never sanitizing the streets. This is a new task which has come to them. So I'm requesting all of you who can support us. We are donating this to our firefighters. I just remembered, and I couldn't have been more passionate than this. So I'm looking forward for industry to support FSSAI in this endeavor.
No, sure, I think a lot of our players are doing the same.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much. So next question to Vishal. Of course, I would like to also know, this industry is being questioned several. I mean, when we put forward the questions to our last attendees, the maximum questions came for air conditioning. And that's how I would like to also know from Vishal, what all changes have made in 15-20 days itself. I'm sure your committee is meeting every day. And you being the chair of ISHRE COVID-19 committee, have come out with this guideline. And what are the critical highlights of this report which building owners should keep in mind while operating their HVAC units? I picked up this question, which was a very common question from hundreds of them. So I thought you could be the best person to answer this. Vishal. Can we get Vishal? Vishal, you are there? I'm sorry, Vishal, I'm not able to hear you. Vishal?
Audible.
Yeah, Vishal? Vishal, are you there?
Pankaji, he is there, but looks like there is some problem with his audio. Maybe we should come back to him a little later.
So I will take next question. Rajnish, you being a MEP consultant designing in number of hospitals, have you come across some important HVAC operational changes or design changes which may be required during or after COVID-19 peak? Rajnish?
That is a problem.
Vishal, are you not there?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope I am audible. Can you all hear me? Hello?
Yeah, Vishal.
Hello? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, Rajni sir,
Hello?
go ahead. We can hear you, sir.
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. This is Rajnish here. I think Vishal.
Yeah, we have just are questioning you. Can you?
Come back? So, in the meantime,
I think there's some technical problem. Just give us a second, please.
Yeah. Can we take Vishal first and then Rajnish, maybe?
Sure. Just give me a second, sir. Mr. Vishal is signed out now. Rajni sir, can you hear me? Sir, I can't hear your voice.
So do I have Sudhir there?
Rajni sir, we come back to you.
This is Vishal here. Am I audible now?
Yes, perfect. So Vishal, this was question to you.
I heard the question, sir, so I'll go on. So I was trying to say that lockdown has taught us a few new things. On a Saturday night, instead of going out for a party, we are having a good technical panel discussion. And as Pankaj Bhai rightly said, over the last 6 odd weeks.
Basically, this is a very relevant question because every day we are seeing grids which is coming via the paramedics and the medical.
For the last 6 to 8 weeks, we've been getting these questions coming our way from all over about air conditioning is good or bad. Should we recirculate the air? Should we do it once through the air? And I just have some very basic things to tell everyone. Number one, if we could all survive without air conditioning, if we could have a weather condition where we do not need air conditioning, I don't think there's anything better for the environment. There isn't anything better for the world as such, because we would obviously be saving a lot of energy and doing it good for the environment. If we can convert each and every system in our world to a once through 100% fresh air system, why not? That's the best. No air conditioning engineer, no MEP engineer would ever question that a once through system or a 100% fresh air system is the best way to go ahead. But unfortunately, we cannot do that because it comes with a huge amount of capital cost, a huge amount of operating cost, which is not rightly technically suggested to everyone. At this very point, I would like to ask all the delegates who are listening in, how many of them are sitting without air conditioning? I would say bulk of them would be with their air conditioning on. Why? Because we do not want to take the thermal stress on ourselves. We want to be ready to fight any other challenge and not be confounded by fighting this high humidity, this temperature which has been increasing every day. So that's a whole problem. So the document basically is everyone else who will talk on this panel, who has talked till now, who will talk after me, is going to be talking about a new normal. If we in air conditioning are saying something a little different, we would rather say that what was supposed to be the old normal is what is supposed to be going ahead. Ventilation, outdoor air ventilation was always a must. Unfortunately, today, a huge number of our buildings were designed without adequate outdoor air ventilation. Now, we have realized that we cannot survive without outdoor air ventilation. Filtration, we've always taken a chance with filtration. Do we take a chance with the water filters we have at our house? No, we do not. We will replace those filters exactly when required because we're consuming that water. But we do not bother about the filters in our buildings. So ventilation, filtration, managing the moisture and the temperature is the only way forward to ensure that if we have any pollutants, if we have any pathogens inside our indoor spaces, that's the only way to get rid of them. That's the only way to throw them out. People have started realizing then. There have been some more advanced comments coming from various bodies here and there saying that in a large office, do not run a central AC, but install a window AC and a split AC. Now, there's nothing funnier than that, because you are saying don't run a central plant because it recirculates air. What does a window AC do? It circulates, recirculates far, far, far more than any other plant that could do. So the best way out is to keep on diluting the air inside, keep on filtering the air with the right filters, and maintain the temperature and the humidity inside over there. People have realized that more and more people we talk to every day, whether they're building owners, whether they're facility managers, everyone has realized that they will need air conditioning. They are putting the air conditioning on. Most people, fortunately, across the country are following the protocol laid down by ISHRAE, and I'm pretty sure that is going to help everyone.
Thank you, Vishal. You said rightly, ventilation, filtration, dilution, and maintaining right temperature and humidity is the only answer. And I think ISHRAE has done wonderful work under your leadership in writing down this excellent document. And I'm once again requesting all of you members who are listening to me that please download this document. It will be very, very useful to you. My next question to Rajneesh ji. You being a MEP consultant designing number of hospitals, have you come across some important HVAC operational changes or design changes which may be required during and after COVID peak? Just 2 minutes, Rajneesh, please.
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can.
Am I audible? Yes, thank you. I think hospitals are today becoming a hub for treatment as well as a hub for infections. Every day we hear that so many paramedic staff or doctors or nurses have got this contamination. And I think a large role is played by the HVAC behind it. I would just like to, compare with a country called Taiwan, which is almost 100 times smaller than India and 50 times lesser in population. Taiwan in January 2020 built up 1,100 isolation rooms, which were specifically, they reworked on the HVAC there. And that became one of the strongest points where this country succeeded in defeating COVID. I think this is one of the few countries where they have successfully fought against Corona and they have won over it. They only have about 450 cases as of today and only 6 deaths, which have been reported from this entire country. Now, what have they done different in the hospitals? See, when the hospital breathes, it breathes infections in and it breathes infections out. So within one hospital, we have so many different departments, so many different facilities running. Conventionally, when as a designer we design any hospital, we are very, very clear in our mind that the infections should be stopped going into the operation theaters and the infections should stop going into the isolation rooms. So what we do is that we create a positive pressure in the hospitals. What it, to a layman, what it means is that whenever you open the door of an operation theater or isolation room, you will have the air rushing out of the room in to the outside. So which means the more air is pumped into these areas than what is sucked in. But when it comes to a situation like you'll be surprised that most of the hospitals should be reversing this entire process. In fact, there has been a delay from our health authorities to issue directives to our hospitals, but slowly our hospitals are learning this. Hospitals are now the importance of creating negative isolation areas. We are now getting air is sucked into the room from outside, and to do this, especially in the middle of the pandemic, we really need to be very quick. We should know what we have to do. We have to create some special zones outside these areas, which will act as a buffer zone, and this will probably be called NT rooms, where we will have to deploy some special fan filter units, supply more air, make the operation theaters negatively pressured, create exhaust into the operation theaters or ICU areas. So these are some basic things which hospitals need to do. Other than this, hospitals also need to reorganize their flow of logistics. So I think in the middle of this, we are learning it a little later, but a lot of people are now understanding the need of reorganizing their HVAC around the hospitals.
Thank you, Rajnish. Well said, and I think we need to learn from COVID a lot of things, and this is one area where a lot of good work needs to be done. Thank you, Rajnish.
Sure.
Pankaj sir, you are not audible.
I think my next question was to Sudhir. Sudhir, you. Hello, Sudhir there?
Yeah, I'm there, sir.
Sudhir, you being a practicing consultant, which according to you are the new technologies that are going to enhance the efficiency and will soon become part of our day-to-day life?
Good evening, everybody. In fact, as we have been discussing for almost an hour, the new technologies which we are already on, like new technology will be digital technologies which will be coming and which will play in our day-to-day lives. As far as we are doing the web meetings here, similarly we will do web meetings in our offices, which we are going to join soon. At the same time, from the security domain, if I talk about, we will be having new technologies of thermal scanning. We'll be having new technologies of touchless operations. We'll have face detection. We'll be having technologies which will be working on smart cards. At the same time, in surveillance, we will be touching upon technologies like video analytics will also be part of the new technology. Just to maintain social distancing and hygiene, we'll be having all these access controls as our new day-to-day working. Like recently, from the construction point of view, I talk about, recently we did a site survey from remotely. There was a person carrying a camera in one of my sites in Goa, and we were monitoring the site and controlling the site from our office in Rajasthan. So at the same time, new technologies which will be coming to play will be artificial intelligence. Some like industries we are talking about, like MI is there. So we'll be gradually introducing technologies like robotics, where there is less number of people in the industry, and so these new technology which are already there in most of the large industries, and gradually I think these particular technologies will be coming in our MSME industries and our small sites as well.
Thank you, Sudhir. I think you said wonderful thing, remote monitoring, and I think recently we came across a case where we had to test a chiller in Malaysia on a remote testing possibility through Zoom. Yeah. And it was possible. Correct. Today. We had never imagined that a HRI 4-point testing for a large chiller can happen from sitting in India. We have always went and gone to those factories to witness those tests. So a lot of things are going to change. And as we already said, is going to change the way we work, is definitely going to change. Well, I think you, Saxena ji, you keep an active eye on real estate. Do you feel that additional health and safety requirements for employees and visitors will increase the OPEX cost of the building, and which may tend to increase the CAM charges, while tenants are always looking for rents and CAM reduction? So what is going to be the way out, sir?
Yeah, I think very interesting question, very relevant, because in today's context, it is both rent and CAM that the businesses are looking at, and they are looking to get the reduction wherever it is possible. So I would say there are three aspects to it. One, from the business side, that they are looking for these reductions. Second, the government notifications which are in place, which would mandate a lot of requirement, not only in terms of the operations, but also in terms of labor. And the third part is from the builder side, that there are advisories which have been published by various departments, but they are there under the Epidemic Act and the Disaster Management Act. So the advisories apparently becomes a mandate. So they have to follow all of it. So from a developer's perspective, I think there are immense requirements which they have to fulfill to ensure that their buildings are functional and they remain functional for the entire duration. If they don't do it, there are challenges around their own rental issues and things like that. But then the things that are working in their favor, perhaps right now, in terms of only CAM, would be that there is a reduction of the employees over here, over there in the building. Secondly, the operational hours have gone down. So these two things create a huge difference for them in the way that they are going to operate the buildings. Now, looking at these two things, plus the model of operations of CAM, which people have, or which organizations have contracted with the developers or the builders, and their operational hours, that is where I think they should work collaboratively with the developers, all the builder, build that trust, work with them, get operational efficiencies, be transparent with them, trying to minimize the wastage, and I am sure they will be able to derive some discounts out of this entire CAM. Maybe to benefit the organizations, instead of a 12-month calculations, they could opt for a quarterly calculation and get credit notes, etc., and that would be helpful. So I think these should be the steps that they should follow. Definitely, there will be a demand for CAM reduction and also for rent reduction. But in both the cases, developers, builders, occupiers, corporates, they have to work together and find a way out, because this is not a usual situation. So that's how it is.
I agree with you, Saxena ji. This is absolutely unusual situation, and I think time is going to tell us many things, teach us many things. Going forward, Abha Sahib, you being a property loss professional and a disaster management enthusiast, we are posing this special question to you. That keeping in mind that safety rating of office complexes are not in place currently, but only basic guidelines are there. How do we tackle this issue of rating our buildings with respect to COVID safety?
Thank you, Dwarka sir. Yes, as such, safety ratings for office complexes are not available, or there is no reference benchmark for the same. However, basic law of land requirements or regulations are in place for aspects like fire and human life safety. We need to understand that COVID safety will fall under health safety regulations. I feel both these aspects are different in nature, or need to handle separately. With respect to COVID safety, Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare are issuing national directives and standard operating procedures for COVID-19 management at public places, workplaces, as well as manufacturing establishment. I think we all need to follow these instructions meticulously. We can consider this as a minimum compulsory and mandatory benchmark. As an individual organization, you are free to raise the bar to any higher levels. Your ratings will be defined by you, and the same will be very much dependent on your proactive approach and strict execution. I feel employee participation will be always there, but you need to maintain continuous communication channel. Taking reference from current situation, I would like to highlight here that we all need to look at our business resilience very seriously. I think Mr. Pant mentioned about this. We need to give due attention and weightage to aspects of pandemic, natural disaster management, or property loss prevention in our business continuity planning. Mr. Pant was here, and if he's still there, I would request him to look at these aspects and consider our request at GSES to include the same in future NBC and National Building Code amendment. GSES is ready to provide necessary support for the same. While on the subject, I'm very happy to share with you all that FSA has already launched FSI Suraksha Index for office complexes, and we all should use the same to benchmark and highlight our individual organizational achievements in domains of fire and security. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash, Abbasab. My next question is to eminent electrical consultant of country, Mr. Pradeep Sheth. What measures and precautions should we be taking before an industry re-energizes their substation or any commercial building recharges their LT panels? Quickly.
So Pradeep ji is not on board.
Okay.
Pradeep ji, are you there?
No. Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening,
Can you
Pradeep
hear
ji.
me?
Yes,
Pradeep ji
yes,
is there, yeah.
you are audible.
Yeah, okay. It's prime important that before starting any office, any electrical system in any building, whether it's an institute or whether it's a industry or whether any commercial building, that to avoid, because the things are lying idle since last 55 days, and there could be a lot of things might have happened to the system. It's very important that you take the necessary steps before starting the system. First and most important thing is to avoid any kind of fire or any kind of short circuit hazards. Remove all the waste material which normally people has a habit to store in an electrical room. Remove all the waste material from the electrical room. Switch off the main power. Isolate all the load. Switch off the capacitor bank, and then you do the total cleaning of the panel boards. Also check whether during this 50 days time there are all the possibilities that rat or maybe a lizard or maybe a squirrel might have entered into panel boards, which is the most dangerous for the electrical system because they are highly conducting body, and if they touch the two bus bar, there could be a heavy short circuit. So remove if there is any this kind of creatures are there, then do the vacuum cleaning or blower dust removing, because dust, it settles on the contacts of the circuit board. It could create a lot of big problems. See, once this is done, then you, once all the load is isolated, you do the mega test and check whether the insulation of all the circuits. Then next very important thing is, which is happening in many projects, I have realized also, that during the shut off time, the earth strips or the earth strip which is connecting the neutral are being stolen by people. So it is better that you first check the healthiness of the earthing, and also check the availability of the neutral. If neutral is disconnected for any reason, if the when the connecting strip is being stolen, then wherever you are getting 220 volt, you will, instead of that, you will get 415 volt, and all your system will blast off. So it is better that you check the neutral and earthing. Once this is thoroughly checked, you start switching on from the upstream side and go slowly to the downstream side. If there is any fault or any circuit is not behaving properly, the same circuit breaker will trip, and that you need to isolate. Also, during this time, you have a UPS bank. Now there are all the possibilities that the battery might have discharge. And so, I mean, whenever you need a power, it might not give you the proper power. So just check the battery healthiness of the battery of the UPS systems. Also check the healthiness of the battery of a diesel generator set which you are using for the standby power. So in case of power failure, if the battery is run down, then the generator will not start automatically, and you will have a big problem. So these are the main steps. If you take care of it, then I think you don't have any fire hazard or short circuit problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Pradeep bhai. Thank you for that step-by-step explanation. You were wonderful, sir. Prashantji, you are involved in designing of different types of projects. What challenges do you see in these projects ahead, especially I'm talking about interior related projects, and how do you plan to deal with them post-COVID?
Thank you, Dargah sir. When we are talking about the interior projects, we are going to face multiple challenges, be it main movement, be it material movement. As the eminent panelists have talked about reduction in the manpower, we are going to face few more issues in terms of entry of the manpower, because we are going to have a lot of restriction on the entry, and that is going to cause number of other aspects which are in terms of reduced reduced operation hours for the workers who are coming on site. So we'll end up into the working in multiple shifts. That's one. Second, when they are coming onto the site, we are asking them to have a lot of PPEs. For example, people are not used to work on the site with the mask on their face. So that's going to cause a lot of discomfort. Third, ask them to use a lot of sanitizations, and they may in that bargain wash their hands or use the sanitizing material. So we have to be very careful when they are using that there are no spillage of water, or which may cause the fire hazards or the electrical hazards. So we have to be very, very careful on this points. One more important aspect when we talk about the interior projects, most of the buildings these days are glass facade building, and there is no people wearing the mask working in that premises. They are going to suffer a lot. So we'll have to make adequate arrangement for them to ensure that they are not cause any kind of inconvenience, and they don't faint on the side, because this is something which happens on normal working site, but the mask on their face is going to be a big challenge. In addition to that, we are going to have a lot of challenges for the material movements also. People are talking about getting the material and putting that into quarantine for 14 days. So when we put the material in 14 days, and interior sites being the small sites in size, that is going to occupy a lot of space. And there are going to be multiple hazards. Again, this can cause this can be one of the reasons for fire hazard. So we have to be very, very careful on this. And in addition to all this, there is going to be a different pressure on all our project managers to maintain the timelines. So these are the various challenges which we foresee in all the interior projects post COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prashant bhai. My next question will go to my friend Neeraj. Neeraj, as the head of ASSOCHAM Gen Council, what scope do you see for your mission in coming times in view of COVID-19? Neeraj ji.
Yeah. Thank you, Dargah ji, for this opportunity. Good evening, friends. So I would like to share with you 2-3 unique features of GEM certification program. That GEM certification program is the only program which is based upon latest ECBC guidelines and National Building Codes guidelines. And this is the only program which has adopted the Fire and Security Index, which was launched by Fire and Security Association of India last year, and it's Dubai program. So this is the program which is not only taking care of the green building certification, green building facilitation of your buildings. Rather, we are more focused on the fire and security things also. So this is the only program which is taking care of fire things also. And one more unique feature with this green and eco-friendly movement program of ASSOCHAM is that we have a control room, a control mechanism at ASSOCHAM where we can control all GEM certified buildings and other green certified buildings through our iPad, our laptops. We have a control room there. So we can monitor in fact the energy consumption, the water consumption, the air quality, and the fire related things on our control panels through ASSOCHAM. And if you talk about COVID-19 things, yes, our team of experts have already started on this, and we are incorporating the hygiene norms and more additional things which can be done in the design parameters of the building. So we have a team of good architects, engineers, energy and environment consultants who are working on it, and we will definitely incorporate all these features in the GEM program. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Neeraj ji. I think I have many more questions, and questions are pouring in from the our guests, and I think I'm extremely sorry that I will not be able to take further questions because paucity of time. We had some two eminent speakers and excellent panelists. I my extreme apologies for not taking further questions, and I will only request you that please, as you have done earlier, please send your questions, and I will request respective societies to ensure that you are responded, and the good suggestions coming from you will be also taken in version 3. So with that, over to Neeraj for vote of thanks.
Thank you, Darkar ji. See, this was again a wonderful program. So this is the second version of the program which we did on 30th April, and that program was attended by 3,000 participants, and this time also I can see excellent number of attendees attending this program. So I'm thankful first of all to the audience, to the delegates who have joined us on this Saturday evening. They should have been in the mall or restaurant, but they are here and they are listening to us. So it shows that they are so much keen in knowing the things that how industry will react after COVID-19. Excellent. I am thankful to the eminent speakers, Darkar ji, who has led this entire program. I'm thankful to all the speakers, all the delegates, all the societies, ISHRE, FSCI, IMA, IPA, GSES. Thank you so much. And our now I can say that our part is done. Now the role ball is at the industry level, how they utilize this guideline, and they can come to us anytime so that we can further help them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neeraj ji.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.